Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest episode of CISA Live. I'm Erin Bika-Wazorik, and today we're going to be talking about the cyber threats posed by the People's Republic of China and what we can do about it. I'm so thrilled to be joined today by CISA's Executive Director, Brandon Wales. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Erin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Are you ready?
I'm excited to be here.
We're super thrilled to have you because this issue has been at the forefront of the national security discussion for quite a while. We saw it in the ODNI's Worldwide Threat Assessment. And in fact, the House of Representatives established a special committee focused on looking at just how real this threat is and what we should be doing about it. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes and just talk about what we see as the cyber threat and where we're seeing it go.
Yeah, first, I would say to the point that you raised at the beginning, China really is the defining national security challenge for our generation. And I think there is no place where that is more true than in the cyber arena. Because of the breadth and scale of the offensive program by the People's Republic of China, that I believe the FBI director said that it is larger than all of the other countries combined. They really are the pacing threat and the one that we are measuring ourselves against. And it is going to require a truly whole of nation, whole of society, frankly, global approach to deal with the challenge that they pose. And I think we have seen time and again where aggressive Chinese cyber activity, whether directed at the United States, whether directed at other countries in the region, other countries around the world, partners and allies, over and over again, they have shown themselves to both have the capability and willingness to execute compromises of critical networks and systems, including our critical infrastructure.
And we've seen that here at CISA, like firsthand, right?
Yeah, so we have been talking over the past year, a little more than a year, about one particular Chinese group that is known publicly as Typhoon. And we have detected that they have compromised U.S. critical infrastructure. And unlike other parts of the Chinese government that are looking to compromise networks in order to further political or economic espionage, the Typhoon actors are compromising U.S. critical infrastructure. They are laying in wait, and they are prepositioning for future network attack, meaning that they are inside of these critical infrastructures to destroy or disrupt them at a time and place of their choosing. And this infrastructure covers a wide array of different critical infrastructure sectors. So we've seen compromises in transportation and in energy and communications and others, and across the country, from both U.S. States and territories out west and in the Pacific, all across the United States. And CISA has firsthand responded to a number of those incidents, helping those critical infrastructure owners and operators understand what happened and ultimately evict the Chinese actors from those networks.
So can you, for the audience out there who might not know, what does compromise mean really in this situation?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's a term that could mean a lot. And at least in the case of the Typhoon compromises, what that has meant is that the Chinese actors have gained access to those networks, usually by compromising a vulnerable edge device, something like a router or a virtual private network controller that's on the edge of a critical infrastructure network. They've got inside, they've stolen credentials, and then they just lay in wait. They try to understand what's happening on that network. They will test access routinely. But in many cases, their goal is to have long-term, persistent access to those networks so that when they get the order to cause a destructive attack, they're able to execute it quickly to meet the needs of Chinese military planners.
And I think what was really interesting, and I think you mentioned it, but this is really a departure from traditional targets, right?
Yeah, so if we're looking back 10 to 15 years ago, most of the Chinese activity we believed was designed to further their political and economic espionage mission. So we saw compromises of government agencies like the Office of Personnel Management to steal the background investigations on federal workers. We saw them compromise defense contractors to steal plans for next generation U.S. military platforms. And that was what they were trying to do, largely. But what we have seen over the past several years is a growing focus on their network attack mission. And what that means for them is they need the ability to gain access to US critical infrastructure to cause disruptions, largely for two purposes. First, to disrupt the US ability to project power into Asia, potentially support allies and partners in the region who might be under threat. And second, to cause broader societal chaos inside the United States. They want to impact our political thinking. They want to affect our geopolitical freedom of action by making our critical infrastructure to be a soft underbelly of the United States.
Is this a threat that is sort of just to the US, or is it global in nature?
I mean, the Chinese cyber activity is global in nature. I mean, even just in the past day, we have seen countries in Europe attribute Chinese compromises of government networks in Europe to Chinese state actors. We and our partners and allies around the world recently released a product on Chinese state security, so the espionage side of the Chinese government, also known publicly as APT-40, compromising networks, both critical infrastructure and government networks around the world. That product was led by our partners in the Australian Cybersecurity Center. The Chinese threat is global. Now, it's not always the same actors. So Volt Typhoon is predominantly focused on the United States. In other parts of the world, including places like Taiwan, it's Flax Typhoon that has that part of the mission. We have other parts of the Chinese government apparatus who are attempting to compromise U.S. critical infrastructure, partners and allies overseas, government networks, critical infrastructure networks. It is a full core press, and that is enabled by the scale and size of the Chinese cyber program, which, as I described earlier, is quite large and gives them the ability to continue to focus on their espionage mission while they have grown their network attack mission.
So the threat is serious. I think we've established that. So now for the good stuff. What's CISA doing about it? What are we doing about it?
Yeah, and so, first thing I would say is this is not CISA acting alone. The way in which we are getting ahead of the Chinese cyber actors is through the partnerships that we've established both inside the US government and with our partners around the world. And so first is we're talking about it publicly. 18 months ago was the first time that we really went public in detail with Chinese compromises of US critical infrastructure and began to walk through what that looked like. And so getting out there with that information, not only that the nature of the threat, but also what are the tactics that they're using. And so one of the more unique tactics that we highlighted last year was this concept of living off the land, where you're no longer seeing custom malware built that's easily detected and often stopped and remediated quickly, but you're now seeing these Chinese actors use the administrative tools that are on a network to allow administrators to make that network function. They're using those administrative tools as part of their operation to burrow in and cause potential disruptions. And so this idea of living off the land requires different approaches for how you detect and how you stop them. So we're getting that information out there. But as I noted earlier, we're also going on site with our partners in critical infrastructure, those that have been compromised, to help them understand what's happened and evict the Chinese actors from those networks. But more importantly, we're also working across the entire community with other cybersecurity firms, with the major cloud vendors, with other parts of critical infrastructure as their force multipliers in this space. And most importantly, we're talking with our allies and partners overseas so that we speak with one common voice. When we talked about Volt Typhoon for the first time, it wasn't the US alone. It was the US in partnership with multiple other foreign partners who are all on record saying, we're seeing this kind of activity. It is a problem. Here's the way to address it. And we're going to combat it as a global community.
I think that international and public-private sector collaboration is really key. I mean, we've been saying that before we were talking just about this, and it's just, to me, this threat is another example as to why we need to strengthen that even more.
And I think it also reinforces the idea of how do you strengthen the global cyber ecosystem, and reinforces some of the most important work that CISA is doing right now, and that's the work that we're doing to try to secure the technology ecosystem. Because the way in which China is getting into these networks is by compromising these vulnerable edge devices. Well, those vulnerabilities are what gives them their entry point into these systems. And so if we reduce the prevalence of those vulnerabilities, if our products, if our technology is more secure by design, it makes their job harder. It'll make it easier for us to detect them, and it'll make it easier for us to stop them. And so when we try to pull the thread through some of the work that CISA is doing, it is not just the work that is focused on China. It is also this broader work that we're doing to strengthen the underlying ecosystem through more secure technology. The pledge we rolled out at RSA this year, with at this point over 160 companies who have committed to designing secure, more technologically secure software and hardware, that is essential, absolutely essential for not only the United States, but since that technology is often ubiquitous overseas, it's also designed to protect our allies and partners around the world.
That I love the secure by design, sort of the idea that it really, the threat actor could be anybody, but if our technology is securely designed, anybody's going to have a difficult time accessing it. I did have a question when you talked about something that was kind of a little scary, is using administrative access when they get into the devices and into the networks. How are there things that we are seeing that allow them access to those administrative functions?
So I think it is the approach that they have taken increasingly, and in some ways, they are the leading edge of this, but we're now starting to see other, even less sophisticated cyber actors employ very similar living off the land techniques. But I think if you think about what they're trying to achieve, they're trying to get a beachhead into those networks, often through these vulnerable edge devices. Then they're looking to steal credentials, often of administrators. And then once they have those administrative credentials, in many, many networks, that gives them the keys to the kingdom. They can do pretty much anything across multiple parts of those networks. And that is what we're seeing over and over again. So once they have that, once they've stolen that identity, they're using it to lie in wait. They're using it to put additional persistence mechanisms inside of those networks that allow them to get back in if somehow one of the ways in which the initial way they got in was closed off. And unfortunately, too often, even when they've been evicted the first time, they'll come back because vulnerabilities often persist. And so the way in which we are recommending to our partners to address this problem does require better understanding, a more intrusive understanding of your network's operations.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is somebody listening to this, whoa, this is pretty intense. Like, what are we asking organizations to do?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I would say you should do. So first of all, work with CISA and work with the US government. There's ways to do that. If you go to our website, how to connect with, for example, our local cybersecurity advisors in the field, that can be a real partner to you in helping you and get to the next level of cybersecurity. Second is take a look at the advisories that we have issued over the past year on the cyber activity from the People's Republic of China. They often will contain and do contain very detailed guidance on how to look inside your network to see if you've been compromised by the actors that we're tracking. So they do provide hunt guidance that either you can execute, or if you have a vendor that does your cybersecurity services for you, ask them if they've taken these steps to look for these kind of compromises. And then third, it is executing the basics of cybersecurity, but in a far more detailed way. So, do you have the right logging in place so that you could detect if someone is if compromised your network? And because of the nature of these tactics, look for logging around your edge devices. Would you understand if one of those devices is compromised and if someone has pivoted off that device into your network? Do you have a baseline understanding of your network's operations? And would you be able to detect if there is anomalous activity? So, for example, it is the traditional practice here is China does a dump of the Active Directory to enable their theft of credentials inside of the network. Well, the reality is administrators very rarely should be doing that. Would you be able to detect if one of your administrative identities executed a dump of all the credentials off your domain controller of your Active Directory domain? That's the way in which you can get ahead of them. So this is an issue of getting a good baseline, understanding if activity is divergent from that baseline, and then being able to dive in quickly to say, do we have a compromise? And if so, how do we lock it down? And then there's obviously a host of other things you could do to make your network more resilient, whether it's network segmentation, whether it is implementing more zero trust principles so that even if there are compromises in one place in your network, they don't have the ability to gain access to all the different parts of your systems.
I think in talking about some of that technical guidance, there are a lot of organizations that we talk about who are, kind of target rich, cyber restrained. And as we talked about in terms of a shift in targeting, sectors that maybe thought they weren't in the crosshairs of this actually are. And so can we talk a little bit about some of the services and things that are available on even where to start?
Yeah, and so, one, to reinforce the point you raised, is the places that we have found Chinese Volt Typhoon actors inside U.S. critical infrastructure today, it is not just the largest, most critical companies in this country. They have gone after small and medium-sized companies, often ones that are in supply chains for larger companies, but also because if their goal is societal chaos and panic, hitting a lot of targets in different areas will achieve that goal, and you don't necessarily need to hit just the biggest targets. So absolutely, this is a threat that should be on everyone's radar. Now, obviously, for those entities that have less capable cybersecurity capabilities and competency within their staff, that is a place where to reach out and we can help. And our cybersecurity advisors can help you navigate which services make the most sense for you. But we offer everything from things that can scan your external IP space to look for vulnerabilities that we know about that you can quickly address. We provide a lot of we can offer more detailed risk assessment services for your entity if we think that you're ready to actually be able to use the findings from those kinds of assessments. But also, we provide a lot of self-pacing guides and assessments you can do yourself to take stock of your security posture at any given time and direct you to additional resources that make sense given your level of sophistication and skill. The one that's really a capstone on this is our cybersecurity performance goals, our CPGs.
I was going to mention those. That's where I would start.
Yeah, the CPGs provide a framework which say these are the controls that we believe are most important, and we, for each one of those, give you an assessment of cost, complexity, and impact. So if you have a marginal dollar of cybersecurity services you can execute, given your level of skill, you can pick the ones that will give you the biggest bang for your dollar. That is a place to start, and we do have some of our services are directly designed to help you assess where you are against those cybersecurity performance goals. And again, you can find all of these on our website, and we want to make this as easy as possible for as much of our critical infrastructure, including those small and medium-sized entities, as possible.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to the field because CISA has people in all regions across the country who are ready to work with you and to explain and to walk you through and support as much as you want. So yes, great. So we talked a bit about the secure by design and secure technology. That seems to, like, how hard is that going to be? Like, what do we need to do to get there, and how long is that going to take?
Yeah, this is a monumental challenge because of just the scale and size of our technology ecosystem. $40 trillion potentially, and it covers the technology industry, and making changes there will be slow and hard. That being said, even in the past year, we have seen real progress. And I said a year ago, CISA was talking about secure by design. Today, everyone is talking about secure by design. 160 companies have signed up to say they're willing to go on record that they're going to make their technology more secure by design. So I think we are making progress, but it is going to take time. And I think this is another area where every company who is buying technology needs to be part of that solution, because we all need to, and starting with the US government, onto our largest critical infrastructure, down to the smallest ones, need to be asking our vendors, are they building their products more secure by design? Are they able to be deployed in a secure state upfront, particularly for those small and medium-sized entities that don't have the degree of technical skill to make sure that their technology is secure.
And this is kind of a concept of, it's like the other side of the coin, right? Which is kind of security by demand. So, I mean, I do think that sometimes it feels like it's hard when you're not a technology or software developer to see yourself in the secure by demand, but there is actually a very powerful mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, the technology ecosystem got to where it is today because companies demanded cheap, feature-rich technology. Well, we need to add into that mix security and safety for this technology. And if that is part of the requirements for every piece of technology that we deploy in our critical infrastructure, it will begin to move the markets in powerful ways. And I think we've already seen commitments from several of the large technology companies. But this is something that we're going to have to keep up a constant drumbeat, not only of the messaging, but also of those procurement decisions, the RFPs that go out on the street. How can you be a buyer of technology and help to contribute to the security of the underlying cyber ecosystem that we all depend upon? I
think that CISA is working on helping technology and software purchasers think through some of those decisions and what are the right questions to ask. So stay tuned, because it's very exciting announcement.
More to come in this space.
Yes. Okay, so it looks like everybody is just so spellbound by your conversation that we don't have questions at this time. So what I kind of wanted to get into with you is there's so much conversation about this. If you were going to kind of focus it on what you want critical infrastructure or organizations to take away from this, what would that be?
Yeah, so the couple things I would take away is, one, that this is a real threat and it matters to you because of the nature, breadth, scale, sophistication of this threat. It can't be understated. Second is that in order to overcome the challenge posed by Chinese cyber activity, it is going to require a significant degree of collaboration and partnership between industry, government, and allies and partners around the world. And every company and every government has a role to play in that. And I think CISA wants to help foster that partnership and collaboration. We think that that's our unique role in this space, while additionally providing kind of technical advice and guidance. And three is looking at how you are assessing and executing risk management on your networks is important, and that needs to start today. Look at whether you potentially have been compromised and what you can do to make it less likely. And then finally, think about how you can contribute to the broader ecosystem, the idea of secure by design. How can you take part with the broader community to make this ecosystem more secure through the decisions that you make, using your pocketbook to drive action and change. But this is something where no industry, no government can take this on by themselves. Everyone needs to work together, and I think we're really committed to playing an important role in that.
You know what I do think we missed that I think is important here, because we talked about the services that are out there. I would say that in my mind, like, act now and kind of don't put it off because it seems too hard. There are a lot of resources available that you can bring to this issue for your organization. But in terms of your thoughts on sort of strengthening the global ecosystem and working with us, we didn't get into reporting and why that's important. And sometimes I think there's a bit of a feeling when you're gonna report that you see something wrong, as though it's an organization's fault. There's more to it, right?
Yeah, and I think this is a very good case study for why reporting is so important. Some of the Volt Typhoon compromises on U.S. critical infrastructure, we were able to tackle because the companies decided to report into CISA that they had been compromised. As we looked at the details, we were able to follow up with them and help them understand that it was the Volt Typhoon actors, and we're able to help them deal with the challenge that was posed. But you're right, too often we don't get reporting on cyber incidents. It makes it harder for us to detect these large-scale campaigns, or too slow to detect them. And again, our goal is to get that information in fast, figure out how we can operationalize it, and then get it back out to the community to help enable the overall security.
Well, and I always thought it was interesting the way that CISA is the way that we were created. It allows for that comprehensive look across sectors. So if someone did see something in one sector and reported it, we'd be able to take that information, critical information, look across and see just how widespread the threat or
and I think that's the idea. The more information we get in, the better we have the ability to look across various infrastructure sectors. And I think particularly with the most significant threats we're facing today, things like China, things like ransomware that is targeted infrastructure in almost every single sector, that the broader reporting is what helps us put these pieces together, because we are seeing consistently these attacks that cross sectors. They're using similar techniques against different sectors because there are common, the technology is is the thing that ties them together. And so the more we get in, the better and faster we're able to get ahead of it.
Yeah. So work with us. Tell us. And there are protections too when you work with CISA.
Yeah, Congress purpose-built CISA to be an agency for partnerships, and they gave us some authorities that allow us to protect information, to shield it from certain liability when cyber threat information is provided to us. So come in, work with us, and we'll make sure that you understand the benefits of working with us and the protections that it offers.
Yeah, outstanding. Okay, so we actually do have an audience question.
Sure.
And we can't say this enough. So what steps can a small business on a budget take to protect against China threats?
Yeah, and so again, there are a set of common cybersecurity practices that would recommend everyone take. Things like multi-factor authentication and enforcing strong passwords inside of your network and things like that. And a lot of those can be done relatively cheaply, depending on the size and scale of your network and your technology. But the better thing to do is to look at our cybersecurity performance goals for small businesses. That was designed with small and medium-sized businesses in mind. Figure out which of those controls you have in place and which ones you don't. What are your gaps against the cybersecurity performance goals? And there's only about 30 different controls or 38 different controls we have in there. We want you to look through them, figure out where your gaps are, and then of the remaining ones, prioritize which ones you're going to take action on. As Aaron said, don't wait. This is not a problem that's going to get better with time. There will only be new and harder things to address. So start immediately, figure out where your gaps are, and then prioritize. Figure out which ones you have the budget to implement first, and put those into place. Whether you could do it yourself or whether one of your cybersecurity vendors or IT vendors can do it, begin to implement those and just work through what that process looks like for you. And for every company, it's going to be a little bit different depending on the nature of the technology you use, your operations, your budget. But this provides you with the I would say the beginning stages for small businesses for how to tackle this problem. And many small businesses, you're going to be relying upon managed services by others. That is very good as long as you understand the risks that those managed services pose, and you're talking about how to ensure that you're interacting with those managed services in as secure a way as possible. And talk to your managed service provider about that, because they can help make sure that your managed service is configured in a way that is secure.
And I think you bring up a very good point about sort of not being intimidated or trying to kind of do everything at once. It actually brings up a very important consideration for company and organization management when they're thinking about long-term investments in security and why that's so important. And so you can take steps today, but organizations should really be thinking about this as like a business imperative when they're planning like long-term and strategic budgets and investments.
And if you look at those companies that have been hardest hit by cybersecurity incidents, and we know about those because they were very public, those cybersecurity incidents have had massive implications on those businesses, both in terms of disruption, economic costs to those companies, and you don't want to be in that position. And so what can you do today to make it less likely? And there are things you can do. There are steps you can take. Some are more expensive than others, but you'll need to decide where your risk tolerance and threshold is, what your budget is. But you need to look at that and start taking action. It is not overwhelming. We've tried to provide stepping stones where you can take to go from basics of cybersecurity up to a higher level. And those apply to small businesses as much as they do to large ones.
And there are also steps organizations and companies can take to make themselves more resilient. And those, you can start actioning today, meaning that if something does happen, your worst day is not as bad as it could have been, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you raised this because I think it is one of the most important things when we think about how do we overcome the threat posed by China. Given their level of sophistication, given their size, if they want to cause a disruption, they probably will be able to. We're not going to be able to protect everything everywhere. And so our ability to be resilient, to be able to withstand disruptions in our systems is going to be critical. So CISA released last year a Shields Ready campaign that talks about some of the steps you can take to make your business more resilient. And again, this is against all threats and hazards. So whether it's done by China or like we saw 2 weeks ago with IT fails because of a misconfiguration or a piece of bad code that caused a disruption, what is your ability to get back up and running quickly? What is your ability to pivot to manual operations where you need to? That level of operational resilience will pay dividends in a wide variety of contexts, and it is incredibly important.
And we have those resources as well to help you navigate through that. So it actually seems like there's good news out there.
There's a lot of help for those people who want it, and we want everyone to take advantage of it. And I think that is why Congress created CISA, to be that resource for the community. And if there are places where you don't see the kind of resources that you think would be helpful, let us know.
Reach out to Brandon. Just kidding. You can reach out
let
to
us, let us know. I mean, we are always looking for ways to do our job better. And all of our programs have been developed, matured, adapted, evolved over time based upon feedback from the community.
Right.
And so we're always looking for more of that.
I think we've seen that in our Secure by Design white paper that we first issued. And, we had a great red pen session at DEF CON last year where we received feedback. I mean, that's just one of the mechanisms. But we received feedback and we were able to take that, action it, update it, make it even better. That's kind of our preferred method, I think.
Absolutely.
At CISA. Okay, we do have another audience question. Are you ready for this one?
Sure.
Okay. How prevalent are insider threats, and should we worry about this?
That is a good question, and it is one where we do talk a lot and have provided a number of resources about how to think about insider threat security and what companies can do to bolster their insider threat programs to better detect malicious insiders. There's not a lot of good data on kind of how prevalent it is. It is something that companies grapple with. There is some degree of threat from foreign nations that want to place people inside of companies. More often than not, companies are dealing with disgruntled employees or other kind of things that could be posed an insider threat. Many of the techniques and tactics you're going to use to detect it are very similar. And we do have resources about that, and companies do need to take it seriously.
Thank you for your expertise. I very much appreciate the insight. I don't know that we always get a chance to really kind of dig into the intricacies of this threat. I think take action, and we can help you do that. And have a great day. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.